Hello and welcome into another edition of the Sun Devil Source podcast, as always presented by Jones Auto Centers and Jones Ford Blvd Valley. I'm your host, Jacob Brooks, and alongside me is our Sun Devil Source publisher, Chris Cartman. Chris, how's it going? It's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, man, doing well. Super busy, always on Thanksgiving. Watching 3 ASU basketball games this week and 2 practices and 1 day less to prepare for the Territorial Cup on Friday after coming back from a road trip to Colorado. But happy Thanksgiving to you, Jacob. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody who watches, all of ASU's fans out there. Really appreciate all the support that we get from ASU's fans at Sun Devil Source. And I've been able to meet so many of our members over the years, and people say hello and all the time, and I always enjoy that. And I just want to let everybody know how appreciated that I feel for them being on the members in the Devil's Sanctuary.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to echo that. Really thankful for not only all the support that I've received just in my short, almost a year now here at Source, but also just to you for this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun working here. And like you said, everybody's on the go. It's a busy Thanksgiving week. We won't have a Sun Devil Source staff writer on the Thursday podcast with us for the first time this year. Everyone's on the go. I'm on the go too. I'm at my grandparents' house right now in Southern California, not at the usual podcast recording setup, but the grind never stops. And like you said, it was a busy week for ASU athletics this week. First, before we can get into the Territorial Cup, we've got to talk about that run that ASU men's basketball went on in the Maui Invitational tournament. The final game just wrapped up about an hour before us recording this, with ASU losing 88-75 to USC. But even making the final of that tournament was not what many people anticipated or expected for the Sun Devils. ASU is now 6-2 and beat the University of Texas and Washington State to advance to that final game. You watched every game. You were tapped in the entire time. What did you make of that run from the Sun Devils?
Well, I tried to warn people that Mo Odom was a little bit different. Multiple times after games at DFA, we had conversations on camera about Mo Odom. I think I tweeted after his first game, I could see him having a 200 assist season, which only 2 guys have ever done. But the thing that was really impressive was the way he filled it up with 36 points in that opener to help ASU beat Texas and Sean Miller in his first season there. ASU fans love it when Sean Miller loses, former Arizona coach. And I mean, the animation between Bobby Hurley and Sean Miller was pretty funny to watch, the way that those guys emote and how they act on the court there. But Mo Odom I think he made 6 of 12 threes, like hand down, man down, right? As the saying goes. The guy was, I didn't know that he was going to be able to hit those types of perimeter shots. I guess he did last year sometimes for Pepperdine against Gonzaga and other teams. And definitely didn't expect ASU to reach the finals. Really hard when you're playing 3 games in 3 days and 2 of those are at night. Like, they had a 20 or 21 hour turnaround from their first game to the second game. And then today was much shorter. It was like they played at 12:30 our time. That's like 10:30 a.m. their time after an evening game. Like, that's very difficult. You could see that they didn't have quite as much energy. I think they wore out a little bit in the second half, and their defense wasn't as good as it needed to be. And they've been giving up too many second chance points and offensive rebounds. That's an issue to watch. But Masamba Diop is playing quite well, and I thought Santiago Truitt had a nice performance today in the championship. Pig Johnson, I think a lot of the internet's really enjoying what he brings to the table. A transition guard and somebody who's a downhill driver and scorer and likes to finish with some power at the rim for being a slider guy, dunking on some people. So this is a pretty fun ASU team to watch, and I think that they're a lot better than I had anticipated, and most people, given that Bobby Hurley had to go out and get 14 new scholarship players, 7 of whom are international players. It's like a where's Waldo team that they put together, and they've had some pretty good looking performances so far.
Yeah, Chris, I remember it was something that you and I talked about on one of our post-game shows earlier on in the non-conference slate for ASU was who would be, with Mo Odom being the main distributor, who would be the main scorer against tougher opponents. And we didn't know if it would be Odom. And I think you and I could both agree we did not expect a 36-point outburst in the opening matchup for ASU in the Maui Invitational. How much does getting that out of his game elevate this squad?
Yeah, quite a lot. He's 7.2 assists going into the tournament, which was in the top 10 in the country, but he hadn't really been shooting at a volume from the 3-point range. But now when I think teams are nervous about his ball screen, pick and roll creation ability and the things that he can do, with especially with Jop as a roller or a popper, because Jop into 3, he gets downhill to the basket. So if you don't blitz the ball screens, which is a little bit of a challenge when you have Jop, and then if you sag, that's a challenge because he's going to be able to hit these threes. He's already proven it. So now I think that for the rest of the season is going to be a challenge for opposing defenses. How are they going to handle pick and roll situations? And especially when the ASU's perimeter players, I'm talking about Truitt and Gerbovich and Adams and Pig Johnson and others, if those guys can make perimeter shots, I mean, like Bryce Ford was able to hit a bunch of perimeter shots in Hawaii and had a 20-point game. If those guys are able to hit shots and keep the floor spaced really well, and Odom has the ability to get to where he wants off the dribble and or handle those pick and roll situations differently with success, no matter how they choose to defend it, ASU is going to be a tough team to defend in the half court. We saw the transition offense was good for the most part. So there's a lot of positive things in how they share the ball, their approach to the offensive end. It's been such a challenging thing for Bobby Hurley's teams to look good in that respect in recent years, but they have it going right now.
Yeah, Chris, and like you said, with that momentum building in the non-conference slate, how would you say this performance has changed the outlook and the expectations for this team moving forward in the season? Because people got to remember, this is a squad that was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 coaches poll and media poll. 14 newcomers, a lot of guys that didn't have experience in a conference like the Big 12 coming into this, but with performances like this, the expectations have to rise a little bit, right?
Oh, no doubt. Before the season, I thought ASU would be somewhere in the 12 win range, 11, 12, 13 wins. I think now Ken Palm is predicting ASU to be around a 500 team. Like that's like 16 wins, maybe 17 wins. And that's good enough with a solid non-conference resume, which ASU is trending toward having. That's good enough to be in the conversation in for NCAA bubble status, like going into the last few weeks of the season, if they're able to do that. Now, the Big 12 is so difficult. Like there's 5 or 6 top 25 teams. Then there's another 5 teams or 6 teams that are in the top in the 25 to 70, 75 range. So ASU still, the analytics and the way that some of these teams are perceived, ASU still in the bottom third of the 16 teams in the Big 12, but certainly better than several others for being picked to finish last in the Big 12 by the media and coaches. And if they can address some of their vulnerabilities, especially being better at communicating on the defensive end in a way that helps them understand their rotations and their box outs and their closeouts better, and they can play with a little bit more tenacity on that side, then I think they have a chance to maybe even do a little bit better than that. And Bobby Hurley needs it. He's in the last year of his contract. It's a lame duck sort of a situation, and I don't know if he needs to make the tournament or not to be able to continue on as ASU's coach, but he's got to do a lot better than they did last year. And it looks like that's at least very possible.
Yeah, Chris, and like you mentioned, ASU had to play so many games in such a quick span of time. Now the Sun Devils get like 10 days to completely rest, completely recover, and the next game for ASU will be on Friday, December 6th, the same day as the Big 12 football championship game. It'll be a game played at the Mortgage Matchup Center in downtown Phoenix, the Phoenix Suns Arena. So should be another opportunity for the Sun Devils to try and perform on a big stage. Now, moving ahead, ASU football has a humongous matchup this Friday against the University of Arizona, rivalry game, Territorial Cup, and we will have a lot to break down with that after a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Jones Auto Centers.
For over 60 years, the Glenn Jones name has been recognized for integrity and honesty.
From the Jones Auto Centers in Wickenburg.
Jones Ford Verde Valley.
Take a nice country drive out to Buckeye.
When you're talking about Arizona's best, you're talking about the Jones Auto Group. It's quick, fast, strong.
I want to invite you to visit our new facility in Casa Grande and enjoy our country-style way of doing business. We're the Joneses.
Welcome back into the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, be sure to check out the description because you can contact Parker Jones directly through phone or email if you are interested in buying a new or used vehicle from one of Jones Auto Centers' many dealerships around the valley. Parker Jones and Jones Ford Verde Valley have been huge supporters of ASU's NIL efforts over the past several years, so we're proud to have them as our presenting sponsors for this podcast, and that gives you Sun Devil fans another great reason to make them your go-to if you live in the Valley and need a new or used vehicle. All right, Chris, it's time. It's time for the main event. If this podcast was a Thanksgiving meal, we're getting into the turkey now. It's time to talk about the Territorial Cup between Arizona State and the University of Arizona, widely regarded as one of the biggest rivalry week rivalries in all of college football, but a lot of people don't really understand the history behind the rivalry. What can you tell our listeners about the history behind this rivalry that's gone on longer than any of us have been tuned into the teams?
Yeah, I even think that a lot of players and maybe even coaches don't know this, but Arizona State, before it was a full-fledged university, it was Arizona State Teachers College, and there was a referendum, Prop 200 in 1958, that was asking the public whether or not Arizona State should be turned into a full-fledged university. And the University of Arizona's president and other university leaders went around the state campaigning to try to get people to vote no on the referendum so that it would still be the only full-fledged university and have the resourcing advantage over Arizona, what became Arizona State. And this was so acrimonious that Sun Devil Stadium, in its first game that year, was fans went in and they saw that no 200 had been burned into the grass by somebody overnight or in the previous day who had seemingly trespassed, broken into the stadium.
Wow.
And so ASU was forced to play its first game in the stadium with this no 200. And also the 60-foot tall letter A that's on Hayden Butte, right by downtown Tempe, had been painted red and blue at the start of the week. And that's where the painting of the A, protect the A, all that stuff came from. And so something like 60 some odd days after ASU and Arizona played in that edition of the Territorial Cup, by a 2-1 margin, Arizona voters passed 200, which then made the Arizona State University a full-fledged university. Governor Ernest McFarland signed it into law. And a lot of the animosity of ASU's fans who are older or that understand this history from their parents or their grandparents now, that's where they've had a hatred of Arizona. And so when you see, like this week in interviews, Jeff Sims say that hate is the thing that's all these ASU fans, ASU players know this game for, and others said the same thing, they may not know exactly where it comes from, but this has an extra air of dislike that is personal, because a lot of ASU fans hold a grudge about Arizona trying to prevent the Sun Devils from becoming a full-fledged university.
Yeah, Chris, I got to be honest. I didn't know any of that. That adds a whole new layer of depth and meaning to the rivalry. It's a lot deeper than some other rivalries where it's like, oh, they play near each other. They got to hate each other or something like that. That's real deep hatred. And
right.
Beyond that, a whole nother interesting wrinkle to this year's Territorial Cup is that Danny Gonzalez, ASU's former defensive coordinator from 2018 to 2019, is now the University of Arizona's defensive coordinator right now. It's his first year in the role, and he's had a lot of interesting things to say about this rivalry, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, he used to be the coach who was big on providing history lessons. So he talked about the Prop 200 1958 referendum, more than any ASU coach that I'd ever heard before him. And he was, he wouldn't even refer to U of A by name. He would call them the anti-200 or the no 200 gang or other types of things. And now that he's the defensive coordinator at Arizona, of course, these clips are resurfacing on social media, the things he said that expressed a lot of dislike for essentially the way that was handled by Arizona. And he's had a pretty funny way of dealing with that by saying, like, I've seen that there's AI videos of me going around this week, when in fact those are real. And by the way, we probably should share one of those before the game on Friday. I'm going to have to go into our Source YouTube archive and find a good one to pull up.
And Chris, from the past to the present, this is one of the most big time, meaningful Territorial Cup matchups in recent decades, arguably the most meaningful one since the 2014 Pac-12 South Championship, because both of these teams are 8-3. Both of these teams were recently ranked in the top 25 of the college football playoff poll. And Kenny Dillingham has had a lot of praise for Brett Brennan's one-year turnaround of the University of Arizona a year after he had his own huge turnaround for Arizona State. What's enabled that turnaround for Arizona on the offensive side of the ball? Because they lost a top 10 pick in wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan, and then now their offense has been producing at an arguably higher level.
Yeah, I think they realized that they made a mistake with their initial offensive coordinator, Dino Babers, who had formerly been the head coach at Syracuse. It never really worked with Noah Fafita and McMillan and the rest of those guys. And so they made a pretty quick course correction, not unlike what Kenny Dillingham did in replacing his initial offensive coordinator. Took over as play calling duties in the middle of that first year in Tempe, and then ended up with Marcus Arroyo the following year, and that ended up being very successful. So Brennan went out and he got Seth Agee, who had been at Marshall as the OC. It felt like that was a much better fit for Noah Fafita, and that's worked out extremely well. Arizona, I think, is third in the Big 12 in points per game, and I would say that Fafita is playing as well as any quarterback in the Big 12. Very, very impressive season. Seems to have much more of a natural chemistry and feel for what Deji's is trying to do with their offense. And they have a lot of quick and sort of shifty playmakers that they deploy around them. Ishmael Mahdi, their running back, is averaging like 6.8 yards per carry. They don't run the ball a ton, but he's a threat for big plays as an undersized back when he has the ball in his hands. And Chris Hudson is their top receiver production-wise, and he's also one of these quick, shifty weapons that you can get a lot done with. On in and out breaking routes and some vertical stuff. And he's a good leverage receiver, good after the catch. And I really feel like their offensive line is they're not that big. They're not that physical, but they do a very good job with angle blocks and understanding what they're trying to do within the scheme. And Fafita, for not being a quarterback who is trying to run a lot, he's more of an undersized pocket passer, but someone who has really good feel and savviness in and around the pocket, and he can extend plays. And when he's not pressured and he's not under duress, he's going to pick a lot of defenses apart. Maybe the middle third is a little bit tougher because he's an undersized guy, and I think that the A gap and B gap pressures have tended to cause a little bit of problems for him. But if he's able to evade rushers and extend plays, that's going to cause a lot of problems for opposing teams. And so this is a difficult offense to prepare for. They're scoring the ball at a very high level. They hit on a bunch of explosive plays. And even against the better defenses that they've gone up against this year, like a BYU or maybe Cincinnati, like they still look pretty good overall.
And Chris, on the other side of the ball for ASU's defense against that much improved offensive unit, last year's T-Cup, ASU's defense was able to be very successful. It was a blowout win that stamped ASU's run to the Big 12 championship game. This year, against an offense that is different schematically and improved in terms of production, what are going to be the keys for the Sun Devil defense against that unit?
Yeah, it's quite different because when you're going up against different coordinators, scheme, and even though you have Fafita and you have a good idea, maybe like what you'd like to be able to do to be successful against him, it's still quite a bit different. I think, pardon me, ASU has been very good at stopping the run. Arizona is not a run-heavy type of a team. So you know that the likelihood is that Arizona is going to be very pass-heavy in the game. I think the really key thing is to make Fafita be uncomfortable in the pocket. You have to kind of keep your pocket integrity when you're rushing with four, so that you can try to not let him get out and have a lot of time to figure out where he wants to go with the football. When he's having to throw off his back foot, that's when he tends to have a few more problems with putting the ball in jeopardy or giving it away. And so I think that the biggest challenge is to present different pictures for him from a coverage standpoint, keep everything in front, which ASU's done a very good job of. The secondary against most of these passing attacks has been quite solid overall. And yeah, they've given up some stuff underneath their zone, but they wall up in the red zone, and they do a great job of getting turnovers on fourth and shorts and not allowing teams to turn drives into touchdowns. That's what they're going to have to do. But I think it's important for ASU to make sure that they have really good sound integrity when they're coming off the ball, so that they don't let Fafita become a freelancer, become a play extension quarterback. And the quickness of Arizona's receivers and their post route scramble drill stuff and how they're able to make things happen improvisationally is really good. And I think if he's basically getting pressured in the interior gaps while the edges are containing him. That is a very important recipe for ASU to be successful in this game.
And Chris, on the other side of the ball for Arizona's defense to have that drastic of a culture and record turnaround in 1 year like Arizona has had, it can't just be changes on the offensive side of the ball. What has changed on the defensive side of the ball for Arizona, and what schematically could they present on Friday?
Well, we talked about Danny Gonzalez a bit earlier, and I just have so much respect for the type of person that he is and defensive coordinator that he is. I got to know him quite well in his 2 years in Tempe, and one of the best memories that I've ever been around in terms of his ability to go back and think about what happened in earlier games and have a recall of down distance situation, what the call was, what the offense did, what he might like to have done differently, or what the options were, or what the breakdowns were. As good as I've ever seen in that respect. And so I knew when he became the defensive coordinator this year, elevating up from linebackers coach and special teams coordinator, he was going to have a great plan. And what the defense that he runs is 3-3-5, originally a stack defense, comes from Rocky Long at New Mexico. Danny Gonzalez played there. Then he was an understudy to Rocky Long. Then they went over to San Diego State. Eventually he became the defensive coordinator, then ASU's coordinator. Then he was a head coach at New Mexico, his alma mater, for a couple, 2-3 years. It didn't work out. Ended up back at in Tucson, and it's a different style. And the uniqueness of the scheme is something that really not that many teams are running. And it's an odd front, but they'll bring up a fourth guy. A lot of times you don't know who the fourth rusher is going to be. They'll have a sort of like an in-between player where he's a little bit off the line of scrimmage, but still like a hand down player. They do an excellent job of being able to get their best playmakers in positions where they know they're going to be able to make plays. So Brian Urlacher, one of the most famous linebackers in recent decades in the NFL, he played, they called it the Lobo position when they were at New Mexico. And then when they went to San Diego State, that position was fantastic at being able to pile up huge statistical production. And then at ASU, they utilized the same positions. They just turned one into the double and one of the Sparky and the double backer, or whatever they called them at the time. And so they have really great, playmaking. I think that of their personnel, what stands out most to me is that their secondary is excellent. In this 3-3-5, they have an ability to keep everything in front of them. They're not giving up big plays. Their passing defense, I think, is by far first in the Big 12 in terms of the yardage that they're giving up. Is very small number. And then they have their nickel player, Tredan Stukes, is an absolute stud. Like, I would say that Keith Abney and Stukes might be the two best players that I've seen in the secondary in the Big 12 this year, between corner and nickel, I would say especially. Their other cornerback play has been very good, Javion Cole, and they're very assignment sound. They understand how to cancel gaps on the interior in the run game, and they work very seamlessly together when they're playing in coverage, and a very difficult team to be able to string together enough plays to have successful drives and turn opportunities into touchdowns.
And on the offensive side of the ball for ASU against that Arizona defense, things look very different compared to last year. Last year, ASU obviously had Cam Scattaboo, now in the NFL, and Sam Levitt was starting under center for ASU. Now he's out for the season, and you have Jeff Sims under center. And we've seen in the games that ASU has had with Jeff Sims as its starting quarterback the game plans have varied so drastically. I mean, you have weeks like the Iowa State game where Jeff Sims ends up with over 200 rushing yards as a quarterback. And then you have weeks like the West Virginia game where it's all through the air. He had 3 passing touchdowns in just the second quarter alone. And then you have weeks like Colorado where Raleek Brown has a historic night. What do you think is going to be or should be the offensive game plan for ASU to try and counteract everything that you just mentioned about the Arizona defense, knowing that Jordan Tyson is going to be a week healthier and knowing that you have Sims and Raleek Brown and all these other guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that is one of the most important things to watch as a subplot in this game. ASU's played these defenses that have been so drastically different in recent weeks. And that's led to the game plan and the play calling be extremely varied. Iowa State, Jeff Sims ran all over the place. West Virginia had a really great run defense, was giving up a lot of big plays in the passing game. That lended itself to having very contrasting styles. Colorado then had the worst run defense in the Big 12. And it just seemed like an inevitability that if you gave Raleek Brown the ball like a whole bunch of times, there was going to be some big play opportunities. I was a little bit surprised that they didn't have more direct runs for Jeff Sims in that game, but my sense was they figured that the dam would eventually break with Brown as a ball carrier, and they were trying to keep Sims healthy for this game. Given that Arizona has been so good against the pass, Jordan Tyson, he's different, and so perhaps ASU may throw the ball more than it otherwise would, but Jeff Sims has had some turnovers and he's put some balls in jeopardy and throwing the ball. And against this defense, I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunities really. And Arizona's they got really good defensive backs. And so my sense is this is going back to the Jeff Sims design run game, especially playing against the odd front looks. I think if ASU's gonna wanna try to have Danny Gonzalez commit more resources to the box to stop the run between Jeff Sims and Raleek Brown carrying the ball. So I envision this being a heavy ground attack. And then perhaps if Arizona commits more, starts creeping up, guys are moving their alignments at the safety level, that's when you could have some opportunities to try to sneak a big play out of them. And by the way, I asked this question to Marcus Arroyo today, and he didn't take the bait. But the trick plays that ASU's had between last year and this year, they've been very good in terms of, like, maybe they haven't always worked, but they have been available and open as designed at a high level. And this is a game that, in my opinion, it lends itself to having some more of that trickery. Rivalry game. You don't have your starting quarterback. You're going up against a really good pass defense. How do you get them out of position? How do you give yourself an opportunity to sneak a big play, right? And that's when you try to get guys thinking, oh, here's the swing pass, and they're coming downhill, and then there's a double pass, or there's some sort of a thing, and I don't know what it will be. We didn't see anything. We didn't see anything in practice that allowed me to see what I think a trick play is going to be. It's just more so that my gut tells me that in this game, in this situation against this team, this is when you want to try to pull something off. Maybe it'll be on special teams. Of course, Blazing Lona Wong is out there raising his hand. Do it again. Do it again. Throw the ball to me, from the punter position. And so we'll see. Maybe Canyon Floyd's going to uncork another one, or maybe they'll have some other trick thing dialed up. But turn it loose. This is a big time game, and but Jeff Sims and Raleek Brown, heavy dose. Those guys are the most important players in the game.
Yeah, and Chris, before we get into our official predictions, I can't help but notice the artwork that you have going on behind you in the 2-box camera. The camera's a little bit wider. We can see a little bit more of what you got going on in the background with one of our writers not here. What can you tell our listeners about those paintings behind you?
Yeah, that one right here is an original of the Camp Tonizona Water Tower. It's available for purchase. ChristopherRoachArt.com. He does really great stuff, not just ASU art. He's got all kinds of other stuff. You can check out his website. I've got the Tillman and the Scadaboo and the Jake Plummer versions on my wall in different sizes that he's been generous enough to allow me to feature. And he's a big time ASU fan and a member of the Devil Sanctuary. And so go buy his art. In fact, one of ASU's boosters told me he's going to pick up a few pieces. He's renovating his house and he wanted some cool stuff. And so the more people that do that, the better.
Awesome. And now we can get into, earlier I made the analogy getting into the Territorial Cup was getting into the turkey. Now we're getting into the dessert. That last little bit of the episode, keys to the game and predictions. I know you just talked about a little bit in your section on the offense, but what would you say is the big overarching key, 2 keys, 3 keys for ASU in this matchup? And what's your official score prediction? Because this is the biggest game of the season from the fans' perspective. And I'm sure people will be keeping tabs and receipts on all of our predictions and everything for this week.
Yeah, look, ASU's defense is really good. Even on a night when ASU turned the ball over 4 times, Colorado had 16 possessions and managed only 17 points, and that was with some short fields. I think ASU's up for this task. I think ASU's defense has typically played well against the style of offense that Arizona has. Now, Arizona with Noah Fafita, as I already said, he's one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the Big 12. So that's a big challenge. But I think the key to the game is ASU not turning the football over with Jeff Sims, goes kind of without saying, but also special teams have been better for ASU in the last couple of weeks. You can have a clean special teams game, not turn the football over, and Jeff Sims can run the ball successfully between he and Raleek Brown. That's a recipe for ASU to be able to win this game. I pick ASU to lose if the game were in Tucson. The game being in Tempe, I'm going to pick ASU to win. And my score prediction is going to be on the lower side, 20-17 ASU.
Yeah, Chris, on my end, I have a very similar key to the game on the offensive end. I just wrote down on my Google Doc, limit the turnovers. I mean, ASU, Kenny Dillingham talked about it after the Colorado game that it's rare that you can win a game when you turn the ball over that many times. And I think any Sun Devil fan will be able to agree that if ASU turns the ball over that many times against Arizona, it probably won't be a similar outcome. The defense can't.
One max, in my opinion.
Yeah. The defense can't bail you out that many times against an opponent that is significantly tougher than the Colorado Buffaloes. So limit the turnovers. I also wrote down that I think that Jeff Sims, if he can establish himself in the running game like he did against Iowa State, ASU is going to need 1 or 2 of those big over-the-top plays from Sims over and over again on the ground, getting the defense tired, susceptible to something over the top. They're stacking the box. Then you got Jaron Hamilton with one of his biggest catches of the season or something like that. I feel like that is another key where ASU is going to need. You talked about maybe ASU getting a jolt in a trick play or getting a jolt on special teams. I think similarly, ASU could get a jolt from if you just get like one play that's a pass play of over 50 yards that can swing the entire momentum of a game when it's a rivalry game and you're at home and it's 2 very evenly matched tough teams. On the other side of the ball, defensively, I think that the biggest key to the game for ASU is going to be, can the defensive line show up in the way that it did against Texas Tech and the way that it did against TCU? I think this is the type of game where if a guy like Prince Dorba can affect the game as much as he did against TCU when he had that 3-sack game and he had the strip sack, or if Justin Watley, who's been kind of on a heater lately, can have like his crowning jewel moment of his final season in Tempe, something like that, I think would completely flip the tides for ASU, because like you said, the Arizona offense has been a well-oiled machine, and the best way to get that machine to break down and get that machine to start kind of being a little more like out of place and crazy things are happening would just be getting pressure on Noah Fafita, get him out of rhythm. Don't allow Arizona to dictate the pace of the game. And I think that if ASU can get good pressure on the quarterback, I think that Sun Devil fans should feel comfortable trusting ASU's linebacker core and trusting the safeties and the DBs on the back end to hold everything down. If ASU can get a big game out of the defensive line, I predict that will happen, and I predict ASU winning by a final score of 23-19. I think it's going to be one of those typical Mountain America Stadium close game late. Both teams make some mistakes that both fan bases wish they could have back, and then ASU squeaks out another close win at home where people are leaving the stadium like, wow, I don't know how they just came away with it, but they did. That's kind of the vibe, that it'll be very similar to a lot of the other games that have happened so far this year.
Okay, and we got a few more picks from our source crew.
Yeah, we do. We have Luke Lendler, Sun Devil Source staff writer, predicts ASU to win 24-22. His reasoning was, quote, "I believe Dillingham is the better coach between the two, and that will be the separating factor. Arizona has struggled in close games this year, whereas ASU has thrived in them." Sun Devil Source staff writer Jake Sloan predicts ASU to win 27-23. He said, quote, "This is the first week this year that Sims and Tyson will have a full week of practice together, and I think that will be very apparent in the game." Sun Devil Source staff writer Joaquin Rodriguez said that he thinks ASU is going to win 27-20. He said, quote, "I think the team has rallied behind Sims throughout all the external noise surrounding the program. And with the Big 12 title implications in this game, Dillingham has shown an ability to have his teams ready for the biggest moments, with this week being no different." So across the board, picking ASU to win so far makes me a little nervous about our predictions whenever we're all unanimously in agreement like that. But all of us, given respect to the Wildcats with our score predictions being close, I think regardless, we'll have a great game as spectators on tap on Friday, Chris.
I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's hard to imagine. I mean, you never know. Rivalry games, sometimes there's blowouts that are unexpected or whatever. I don't think ASU is going to win in a blowout. That would be a surprise. I actually think that Arizona has a wider range of possibilities with what could happen in the game, but I do think it's going to be close and come down late in the fourth quarter, because that would just be the normal ASU way of operating, other than, maybe once or twice this year.
Yeah, Chris, like you said, that's just how the games have been for ASU this season. I remember Kenny Dillingham was asked at his Monday press conference the week before Colorado, when he was talking about NIL stuff, if he could have a food item after him, what would it be? He said a cardiac burger, just because of how many close games ASU has been in. But with how many close wins ASU has had this year, ASU goes into this game still playing for something. ASU still has, although albeit an outside shot, a shot at reaching the Big 12 title game. And even if ASU doesn't reach that game, ASU is still going to go bowling and play in a bowl game. What can you say about the implications of this game and also potential bowl destinations for the Sun Devils if they were to not make the conference championship game?
Yeah, it's going to take a combination of other outcomes that are unlikely, very unlikely for ASU to make it. It's probably a 25-1 shot, 20-1 at best. But a lot of people are paying attention to where ASU may go bowling, and this is the last year of the Pac-12 bowl tie-ins for the teams that have moved on to the other conferences. And it seems like one of the major things that we're watching is whether two Big 12 teams make it to the CFP. Because if Texas Tech and BYU or Utah, perhaps, if two of them make it, that then makes it easier for a team like ASU to be higher in the pecking order of the bowls. And so I think the most likely bowls that ASU could end up at playing in would be, and not necessarily in order, but the Holiday Bowl, the Sun Bowl, and Vegas. And I think this game has major implications because with the teams being tied, the winner of this game is more likely to go to the better bowl, which would be either Vegas or the Holiday. So I think if two Big 12 teams make it to the CFP and ASU wins this game, the Holiday Bowl becomes perhaps the most likely outcome. Vegas would maybe be the second most likely. Were ASU to lose this game, then I think that the Sun Bowl is a very good possibility. And I think a lot of ASU fans don't want to go back to the Sun Bowl. Nothing against the Sun Bowl, but we've been there a few times recently, and it's also on New Year's Eve day in the afternoon. And then you have to kind of race out of there if you want to catch a flight back to Phoenix before New Year's Eve. So there's a lot that we're going to be paying attention to here, Jacob. And the game is going to matter in terms of where we're at. The fourth most likely bowl is probably the LA Bowl, which is super early. It's, I think, December 13th. That would potentially be the most likely outcome were ASU to lose and only one Big 12 team go to the CFP, moving Utah, Arizona, Washington is a contender for the Holiday, or maybe Vegas or something like that also. So those are some of the things to look for, but there's still a lot of, scenarios that could happen here.
Yeah, like you said, Chris, a lot of scenarios, a lot of hypotheticals. That'll just about do it for this episode of the podcast. After the game is played on Friday, we'll have much more clarity on everything like that. But busy Thanksgiving week. Maui Invitational just wrapped up, Territorial Cup coming up on Friday. We appreciate everybody who tuned in to this episode of the Sun Devil Source podcast presented by Jones Auto Centers. Like Chris mentioned at the outset, we're very thankful for all of you who continue to tune in and week out. We'll have all the game day coverage you guys need from the game on Friday against the University of Arizona, post-game show, social media content, multiple articles, full field level highlights, everything that you guys need to fill those Thanksgiving bellies the day after the holiday. We appreciate everyone that tuned in, and we'll see you all in the next one.